Hello and welcome back to the second part of Dragon Age Codex reading. We are in the middle of lore and this is for the first act. So, let's start with History of the Circle. It is a truth universally acknowledged that nothing is more successful in inspiring a person to mischief as being told not to do something. Unfortunately, the Chantry of the Divine Age had some trouble with obvious truths. Although it did not outlaw magic, quite the contrary, as the Chantry relied upon magic to enkindle the eternal flame that burns in every brazier in every Chantry, it relegated mages to lighting candles and lamps and perhaps occasional dusting of rafters and eaves. I'll give my readers a moment to contemplate how well such a role satisfies the mages of the time. It surprised absolutely no one when the mages of Val Royeaux in protest snuffed the sacred flames of the cathedral and barricaded themselves inside the choir loft. No one, that is, but Divine Ambrosia II, who was outraged and attempted to order an exalted march upon her own cathedral. Even her most devout Templars discouraged that idea. For 21 days the fires were made unlit while negotiations were conducted, legend tells us, by shouting back and forth from the loft. The mages went cheerily into exile in a remote fortress outside of the capital, where they would be kept under the watchful eye of the Templars and a council of their own elder Magi. Outside of normal society, outside of the Chantry, the mages would form their own close society, the Circle, separated for the first time in human history. Interesting. This is Sister Pitrine, who we know doesn't like elves and Canary that much, but seems to kind of like mages. And it seems like it seems like it's the mage's idea to create the Circle, according to her. I don't know if that's 100% true, but it could be. Okay, Darkspawn. Those who had sought to claim heaven by violence destroyed it. What was golden and pure turned black. Those who had once been mage lords, the brightest of their age, were no longer men, but monsters. Theranoids 12:1. Sin was the midwife that ushered the Darkspawn into the world. The Magisters fell from the Golden City, and their fate encompassed all our worlds, for they were not alone. No one knows where the Darkspawn came from, a dark mockery of men in the darkest places they thrive, growing in numbers as plague of locusts will. In raids they will often take captives, dragging their victims alive into the deep roads, but most evidence suggests that these are eaten. Like spiders, it seems Darkspawn prefer their food still breathing. Perhaps they are simply spawned by the darkness. Clearly we know the evil has no trouble perpetuating itself? No. The last blight was in the Age of Towers, striking once again at the heart of Devinter, spreading south into Orlais and east into the Free Marches. The plague spread as far as Ferelden, but the withering and twisting of the land stopped well beyond our borders. Here Darkspawn have been more than the stuff of legends. In the northern lands, particular to Finter and Anderfels, they say the Darkspawn haunt the hinterlands, preying on outlying farms and isolated villages, a constant threat. Okay, bit about the Darkspawn. Lyrium. Lyrium is the king of metals. Beneath our feet it sings. When properly refined it is smooth, slightly iridescent, silvery liquid. In the hands of Dwarven Smithcast it is mixed with steel to produce indestructible armour and blades that hold an edge for centuries. In the hands of the Shaper it becomes a repository for living memory, and some scholars maintain this as evidence that Lyrium is itself alive. It finds its most lucrative application in the hands of the Formeri, who use it in conjunction with baser metals like gold, silverite, viridium, or even iron to produce enchantments. Though mages, of course, consume it in a diluted form to bolster their abilities, it is not recommended. Overindulgence in lyrium can have disastrous consequences, particularly in more concentrated amounts. It is not advisable, for instance, that any reader handle lower lyrium, in many cases, can kill on contact. Interesting. It says that using lyrium potions can have disastrous consequences. I'm not sure that's 100% true, but maybe it's just not shown in the game. Maleficarum. It has been asked, what are Maleficarum? How shall we know them? I have been as troubled by this question as you. You have come to me for the wisdom of the Maker, but none have seen the Maker's heart save beloved Andraste. And I have done as all mortals must, and looked to the words of his prophet for answers, and there I found respite from a troubled mind. For she said to us, magic exists to serve men, and never to rule over them. Therefore I say to you, they who work magic which dominates the minds and hearts of others, they have transgressed the Maker's laws. And Our Lady said to us, those who bring harm without provocation to the least of his children are hated and accursed by the Maker. And so it is made clear to me that those should be to us all, that magic, which fuels itself by harming others, the letting of blood, is hated by the Maker. Those mages who honour the Maker and keep his laws we welcome as our brothers and sisters. Those who reject the laws of the Maker and the words of his prophet are an apostate. They shall be cast out and given no place among us. From the sermons of Justinia I. So that was the first leader of the chantry. Mana and the use of magic. Mana is that which defines a mage. It is potential that dwells within a person but does not always manifest itself. All men are connected with the Fade and we go there to dream, but only those with this potential may draw upon its power. Mana is, then, a measurement of one's ability to draw power from the Fade, and it is this power that is expended in magic. As in all other things, it has limits. Just as man has the strength to lift only so much weight and no more, a mage cannot work more magic at one time than his mana allows. If he wishes to work magic that would be beyond his strength, a mage must bolster his magic with lyrium. Without lyrium, it is possible for the reckless to expend their own life force in the working of magic, and occasionally ambitious apprentices injure or even kill themselves by overexertion. From the lectures of First Enchanter Wensless. Now he says that you have to use lyrium, but the other one said that using lyrium could be bad. I don't know, it's just interesting. Demonic possession. Why do demons seek to possess the living? History claims they are History claims they are malevolent spirits, the first children of the Maker, angry at the Creator for turning from them, and jealous of those creations he considered superior. They stare across the veil, and the living do not understand what they yet see, yet they know they crave it. They desire life, they pull the living across the veil when they sleep, and prey on the psyche with nightmares. Whenever they can, they cross the veil into our world to possess it outright. We know that any demon will seek to possess a mage, and upon doing so will create an abomination. Most of the world does not know, however, that the strength of an abomination depends entirely on the power of the demon that possesses the mage. It is true, in fact, of all possessed creatures. One demon is not the same as any other. Demons can, for instance, be classified. Enchanter Bram's categorization of demons into that portion of psyche that they primarily prey upon has held since the Tower Age. According to Bram, the weakest, most common demons are those of rage. They are the least intelligent and most prone to violent outbursts against anything living. They expend their energies quickly, and most powerful of them exhibiting great strength and occasionally the ability to generate fire. The next are demons of hunger. In a living host, they become cannibals and vampires. Within the dead, they feed upon the living. Theirs are the powers of draining, both of life force and of mana. Next are the demons of sloth, the first on Brahm's scale that are capable of true intelligence. In its true form, this demon is known as a shade, a thing that is nearly indistinct and invisible, for such is sloth's nature. It hides and stalks unaware, and when confronted, it sows fatigue and apathy. Demons of desire are amongst the most powerful and are the ones most likely to seek out the living and actively trick them into a deal. These demons will exploit anything that can be coveted, wealth, power, lust, and they'll always end up getting far more than they give. The desire demon's providence is that of illusions and mind control. Strongest of all demons are those of pride. These are the most feared creatures to loose upon the world. Masters of magic and in possession of vast intelligence, they are true schemers. It is they who seek most strongly to possess mages, and will bring other demons across the veil in numbers to achieve their own ends. Although what that might be has never been discovered, a greater pride demon brought across the veil would threaten the entire world. Okay. The Khun. Long ago, the Ashkari lived in a great city by the sea. Wealth and prosperity shone across the city like sunlight, and still people grumbled in discontent. The Ashkari walked the streets of his home and saw that around him there were signs of genius. Triumphs of architecture, artistic masterpieces, the palaces of wealthy merchants, libraries and concert halls. But he also saw signs of misery. The poor, sick, lost, frightened, and the hopeless, and the Ashkari said to himself, "How can one people be both wise and ignorant, great and ruined, triumphant and despairing?" So the Ashkari left the land of his birth, seeking out other cities and nations, looking for people who had found wisdom enough to end hopelessness and despair. He wandered for many years through empires filled with palaces and gardens, but every nation of the wise, the great, and the mighty found the forgotten, the abandoned, and the poor. Finally he came upon a vast desert, a wasteland of bare rock, clawing at an empty sky, where he took shelter in the shadow of a towering rock, and resolved to meditate until he found his answer or perished. Many days passed, until one night, as he gazed out from the shadow of the rock, he saw the lifeless desert awaken. 100,000 locusts hatched from the barren ground, and as one night turned south, a single wave of moving earth. The Ashkari rose and followed their wake, a path of devastation miles wide, where the once verdant land turned to waste, and the Ashkari's eyes were opened. Existence is a choice. There is no chaos in the world, only complexity. Knowledge of the complex is wisdom. From wisdom of the world comes from the wisdom of the self. Mastery of the self is the mastery of the world. Loss of the self is the source of suffering. Suffering is a choice and we can refuse it. It is in our own power to create the world or destroy it. And the Ashkari went forth to his people. An excerpt from the Kun, Canto 1. Oh, interesting to hear how the Canary religion, origin story is. It's not like most religions kind of start with the with a god or something, and this one's starting straight up with there are empires that have lots of people in them already. It's kind of similar to sounds from not that I know much of it, it sounds a bit like Buddhism, just because of one person going and meditating. Like the origin story sounds a bit like it, not the I don't think the teachings sound like it. Anyway, cardinal rules of magic. You must not be under the misinterpretation that all magic is all-seeing. There are limits, and not even the greatest mages may overcome them. No one, for instance, has found any means of travelling, either over great distances or small ones, beyond putting one foot in front of another. The immutable nature of the physical world presents this. So no, you may not simply pop over to Minrathous to borrow a cup of sugar, nor may you magic the essay you forgot in the apprentice dormitory to your desk. You'll simply have to be prepared. Similarly, even when you send your mind into the Fade, your body remains behind. Only once has this barrier ever been overcome, and reputedly the spell requires 2/3 of the Lyrium and Tevinter Imperium, as well as the lifeblood of several hundred slaves. The results were utterly disastrous. Finally, life is finite. A truly great healer may bring someone back from the very precipice of death, but when breath and heartbeat have ceased, but the spirit still clings to life. When the breath and heartbeat have ceased, but the spirit still clings to life. Once the spirit has fled the body, it cannot be recalled. That is no failing of your skills or power, it is simply reality. First Enchanter, Wenceslas. Blood magic, the forbidden school. Foul and corrupt are you, who have taken my gift and turned it against my children. The ancient Tevinters did not originally consider blood magic a school of its own, rather they saw it as a means to achieve a greater power in any school of magic. The name of course refers to the fact that the magic of this type uses life, specifically the form of blood instead of mana. It was common practice at one time for a magister to keep a number of slaves at hand, so should he undertake the workings of a spell that was physically beyond his abilities, he could use the blood of his slaves to bolster the casting. Over time, however, the Imperium discovered types of spells that could only be worked by blood. Although Lyrium will allow a mage to send his consciousness into the Fade, blood would allow him to find the sleeping minds of others, view their dreams, and even influence and dominate their thoughts. Just as treacherous, blood magic allows the veil to be opened completely so that demons may physically pass through into our world. Thought for some time to have been stamped out in the Imperium, the practices of blood magic seem to be on the rise in recent years. The current Black Divine has lifted most of the prohibitions against dream walking, so many mages in the Imperium now use it openly in the name of research. The Tranquil. Although apprentices do not know the nature of the harrowing, all of them understand its consequences. They either pass and become full mages, or they are never seen again. Those who fear to undertake this rite of passage, or who are deemed too weak or unstable, are given the rite of tranquility instead. The actual procedure, like the harrowing, is secret, but the results are just as well known. The right severs connection to the Fade. The Tranquil therefore do not dream. This removes the greatest danger that threatens a weaker, unprepared mage, the potential to attract demons across the Veil. But this is the least of the Tranquility's effects. For the absence of dreams brings with it the end of all magical ability as well as all emotion. The Tranquil, ironically, resemble sleepwalkers, never entirely awake nor asleep. They are part of the circle, however, some might say they are the most critical part. They have incredible powers of concentration, for it is simply impossible to distract a Tranquil mage, and this makes them capable of becoming craftsmen of such skill they rival even the adeptness of the dwarfs. The Fomari, a branch of the circle devoted to item enchantment, is made up exclusively of Tranquil, and the source of all wealth that sustains our towers. Okay, the Veil. I detest this notion that the Veil is some manner of invisible curtain that separates the worlds of the living from the world of the spirits, whether it be called the Fade or the Beyond is a matter of racial politics I refuse to indulge in at this moment. There is no this side or that side when it comes to the Veil. One cannot think of it as a physical thing or barrier, or even a shimmering wall of holy light. Thank you very much for that image, your perfection. Think of the Veil instead of opening one's eyes. Before you opened them, you saw the world as you see it now, static, solid, unchanging, and now they are open, you can see our world as spirits see it. Chaotic, ever-changing, a realm where the imagined and the remembered have as much substance as that which is real. More in fact, a spirit sees everything defined by will and memory, and that's why they are so very lost when they cross the Veil. In our world, imagination has no substance. Objects exist independently of how we remember them, or what emotions we associate with them. Mages alone possess the power to change the world of their minds, and perhaps this forms the nature of a demon's attraction to them. Who can say? Regardless, the act of passing through the Veil is much more about changing one's perceptions than a physical transition. The Veil is an idea. It is an act of transition itself, and is only the fact that both living beings and spirits find the transition difficult that gives the Veil any credence as a physical barrier at all. Interesting theories. I think this might be changed in Inquisition, like the Veil description, due to some things that happen in it, but we'll see. The Box of Screaming. I received the box from a man I met in the Silent Plains. He spoke little and would not reveal his name. For reasons I shall not detail here, I had been kidnapped and left for dead in that grey wind-blast wasteland. After days of walking, I was parched and close to death. I was about to dash my head on a rock to speed my passing when a man arrived. He possessed a water skin containing ample water for a person travelling from our location to the Imperial Highway. From there, he said, I could find my way to Solus or Pervantium. He offered to give me the water skin if I agreed to take 3 things from him: a glowing crystalline shard, a bronze sphere, and an iron-bound box with no hinges. I asked the man if he wished to have these items delivered. He said that he merely wanted me to have them. It was an odd request, but I was too weak and too desperate to think much of it, and so I agreed. The man put the items into a leather sack, to which he handed to me along with the water. What about you? I asked. He said nothing, only pointed in the direction from which he came. There was nothing that way, I said. He merely smiled at me. I found the Imperial Highway about a day later, and a caravan driver agreed to take me to Pervantium in exchange for the large glowing shard. In Pervantium, I bartered the bronze sphere for new clothes and a room at the inn. That night, I examined the iron-bound box and found no way to open it. I held it to my ear and thought I heard slow, measured breathing come from within. My mind was afire with curiosity, and I obtained from the innkeeper a large hammer, thinking to smash the thing open. The moment the hammer touched the box, it shrieked. A shrill sound pierced the depths of my soul. I gave the box to the innkeeper in the morning and felt better for having rid myself of it. A page torn from a mysterious journal on display in the Black Emporium. Interesting. I wonder if this is a reference to something. Anyway, that is us finished lore. On to characters. So this is going to be... the rest of it wasn't really spoilers for the rest of the game. Characters are going to spoil up to the end of Act 1. And these will probably be updated every single act as we get more information about people. Let's start with Anders. Magic is a tool, same as a bow or a sword, which you cut off a child's hands to ensure he never wields one in anger. Anders has a rocky history of the Circle of Magi, taken from his family when his talents first manifested. Anders was still a boy the first time he ran away from the Circle. We captured and returned dozens of times. Anders was still considered only a reckless scamp by the first enchanter Irving, who thought his easy temper and sense of humour made him no true threat. But during his final escape, Anders befriended the Warden Commander of Amaranthine and accepted an offer to become a Grey Warden. Life as a warden changed him, introduced him to the free fade spirit known as Justice, who slowly convinced Anders to turn his attention beyond personal suffering. Infused with Justice's fervor, Anders offered to merge with the spirit in the name of the Mage freedom, starting them both down a dangerous path that turned the purity of justice into the unthinking hatred of vengeance. Aveline Valan. If it's family you protect, it doesn't matter who it is, blood or not. Aveline was born in Orlais, but she never knew the country. Her father, Benut Dulac, was a chevalier who lost his patron to the game of intrigue. He fled to Ferelden while Aveline was an infant, and though his holdings were meagre, he was determined that she shall have a life he had lost. She would become a knight, and no matter the cost. He eventually sold everything to sponsor Aveline into King Caelan's service. Knightly skills seemed bred into Aveline's bones, but she had her doubts, starting with her namesake, Sir Aveline. The first female knight of Orlais was orphaned, mocked for her looks, and murdered when she dared stand with men in tournaments. Her glory lies in tragedy, but the living Aveline doesn't revere sacrifice. A principled death is still death. Her father was proud of her, and she would never be the knight he wished for. Aveline married Wesley Valan while serving in the Ferelden army. They were kindred spirits and determined guardians. His death during the Blight scarred her, not just his loss, but that she failed to protect him. Aveline has healed in the past year, but she is yet to forgive herself. Accordingly, she is fiercely protective of the Hawks and Albert. They share a bonded loss, a connection she cherishes, but will not allow to be repeated. Okay, so this is a bit of Aveline before what's just happened in the story. Here's Aveline afterwards. Since the adventure in the Deep Roads, Aveline has settled into life as captain of the guard. She has removed the stain of Captain Jevon's corruption and turned the guardsmen into effective enforcers of the law and order. Becoming captain of the guard title should have brought. That title shouldn't be there. That word title shouldn't be there. Becoming captain of the guard should have brought Aveline stability, but she instead found herself taxed by having so many people under her care. She is very protective of the people she commands, to the point of training each guardsman herself and personally reinforcing otherwise simple patrols. Injury rates are lower than ever before, but the guards are beginning to feel smothered. Aveline is utterly dedicated to her job, leaving no time for anything beyond the occasional sidetrack with Albert, even though it is an excuse to watch over people she cares about. She's a guardian in every waking moment, and she doesn't seem to know how to put down the weight she carries. Bartran Thuris. Half of Kirkwall wants to be my best friend right now. The history of noble House Thuris stretches back to the foundation of Orzammar. The memories say that 3 times a child of House Thuris took office of Assembly Steward. They held appointments in the Shaper of Memories and the Shaper of Golems, but no longer. In the second year of the reign of King Edrin Iduken, Lord Anver Thuris was found guilty before the Assembly of willfully manipulating proving matches in favour of his house. For this affront to the ancestors, he and his house were sentenced to exile on the surface. Anvar died a mere 5 years later, leaving behind his lady Ilsa, 10-year-old Bartrand, and 2-year-old Varric. Exile, surface life, and the loss of her husband conspired against Lady Ilsa, who took to her drink, leaving young Bartrand to manage what was left of House Thuris. By the time he was 15, Bartrand had doubled his family's fortune. The disgrace of House Thuris fueled his ambition, and once noble title gave him instant place amongst the Kalnas, the old money elite of the Dwarven Merchants Guild. He used it to build alliances and business ventures as if he was a member of the Orzammar Assembly. By the time Lady Ilsa died, Bartrand had made the Thuris family one of the guild's most influential, but wealth and power on the surface couldn't sate him. He began to court alliances with the wealthiest ascendant families, branching into banking and merchant companies. Guild members muttered that nothing will satisfy Bartrand but complete reconstruction of House Thuris's estate in Orzammar, down to the rivers of lava built in Kirkwall. Okay, so Bartrand really wants some revenge. He wants his stuff back. He wants his family's honour back. So that kind of gives us some measure of what he is. Doesn't explain why he betrayed us, but you know, it gives us some vision into him. Bethany Hawke. Albert's younger sister Bethany died during the family's flight from Lothering, leaving Albert and Bethany's twin sister Carver as the only surviving children. Like Albert, Bethany was an apostate mage and hiding from the circle since childhood. Protecting Albert and Bethany from the Templars became a defining fact of the family's life, forcing them to move frequently and live well beyond their means in small hamlets like Lothering. Bethany was close to her eldest sibling and idolized and envied by the way Albert embraced magic, but she could never give up her resentment of being different and fear for what the future would hold. Carver. 100 ways to run, and we choose backwards, whatever you say, but chasing an old name isn't really starting over. Strong and strapping, Carver is a skilled warrior set on proving himself, although it's not always clear who he's trying to impress. The son and sibling of mages, he grew up surrounded by magic he couldn't truly understand. Now he feels like something was expected that he could never deliver. He cares deeply for his family, but sometimes feels like the stupidest person in the room. Carver, what is this? Foundered? And that doesn't seem like a word. Foundered. In Lothering. He blamed his lack of direction on not wanting... Maybe floundered? I don't know. He blamed his lack of direction on not wanting to draw attention to his family of apostates at home. After his father died, he started down a military path. However, the blight and rout at Ostagar ended this career almost before it could start. He knows that a swift fight was the only reasonable course in face of the Darkspawn advance. He would almost rather have stood and fought. Doomed though the effort was, facing the Horde had purpose, something Carver had been searching for. Knight Captain Cullen. Knight Captain Cullen was one of the few Templars who survived the incident at the Circle of Magi in Ferelden. The possessed blood mage Uldred took over the tower, and in his madness he filled it with summoned demons and abominations. Cullen was imprisoned, tortured, and forced to watch the slaughter of his fellow Templars. The ordeal shocked him, and he emerged from it convinced that Templars failed to see how dangerous mages can be. After Cullen returned to his duties, it became clear he would go to any lengths to enforce the Chantry's rule. His zeal troubled Knight Commander Gregor, who felt it unwise to let Cullen watch over the men and women he deemed responsible for his torment. Gregor sent Cullen to serve under Knight Commander Meredith in Kirkwall, and Meredith found Cullen's view of mages similar to her own. Of her company, only Cullen had seen the mage's potentially terrifying power firsthand. She believed he could be an influence over the other Templars' views. Consequently, Cullen rose quickly through the ranks to become Knight Captain and Meredith's second in command. Now, Cullen, I'm not sure that... I think you can maybe kill him in Origins? I can't remember. And it's a bit weird because he's in every game. I don't know. Interesting. I'm wondering what would change in this Codex entry if you did different things in Origins. The Hero of Ferelden. The Hero of Ferelden once belonged to a clan of Dalish elves. An encounter with a tainted magical mirror corrupted the hero and threatened his life. Only the Grey Wardens held the cure. To save the hero's life, the clan gave him up to the Grey Warden commander Duncan and the Order. The hero fought and killed the Archdemon and lived to tell the tale. If the Archdemon gone, the Darkspawn ranks broke and the Horde was easily routed. After ending the Blight, the hero of Ferelden took up the mantle of Warden Commander and began the task of rebuilding the Order in Ferelden. That's just what happened in Origins. Fenris. Even those who live without chains are still bound, by fear, by tradition, by honour. Slaves dream of freedom, but I found free men dream of it even more. Fenris was a slave, a bodyguard to Magister Danaris of the Tevinter Imperium, until his escape several years ago. He speaks little of his past, saying that he most recently came to Kirkwall from Tantervale in the north. The markings on his skin are akin to runecrafting made of lyrium and ink, and they suffuse Fenris's flesh with power even he does not truly understand. The process of creation was painful, and in unguarded moments, Fenris attempts to control the agony that lingers still. Even so, the markings enhance his fighting skill and have made him a unique and formidable warrior. Flemeth. You are required to do nothing, least of all believe. Ages ago, legend says Ban Conabar took his wife, a beautiful young woman who harboured a secret talent for magic. Flemeth of Highever. And for a time they lived happily, until the arrival of a young poet, Orson, who captured the lady's heart with his verse. They turned to the chastened tribes for help and hid from Conabar's wrath in the wilds until word came to them that Conabar lay dying. His last wish was to see Flemeth's face once more. The lovers returned, but it was a trap. Conabar killed Orson and imprisoned Flemeth in the highest tower of the castle. In grief and rage, Flemeth worked a spell to summon a spirit into this world to wreak vengeance upon her husband. Vengeance she received, but not as planned. The spirit took possession of her, turning Flemeth into an abomination. A twisted, maddened creature, she slaughtered Conabar and his men and fled back into the wilds. For 100 years, Flemeth plotted, stealing men from Chasten to sire monstrous daughters, horrific things that could kill a man with fear. These Kakari witches led an army of Chastened from the wilds to strike at Alamari tribes. They were defeated by the hero Cormac, and the witches burned, so they say. But even now, wilders whisper that Flemeth lives on in the marsh, and she and her daughters steal men who come too near. Morgan's mother saved the last Grey Wardens from death at the top of the Tower of Ishal, but just who or what Flemeth truly is a mystery. She also saved the Hawke from Ogre. Actually, the Ogre was dead from General Darkspawn. Anyway, Isabella. I'm Isabella, previously Captain Isabella. Sadly, without my ship, my title rings a bit hollow. Isabella is vague about her days as a sea captain, though it's obvious she was involved with piracy and smuggling. Shortly after the Blight ended, Isabella's ship was caught in a storm near the Wounded Coast. The vessel was destroyed, and Isabella feels lucky to have escaped for life. Now she's stranded in the Free Marches, spending most of her time in the Hanged Man Tavern. Isabella also revealed she was born Rivaean, but spent many years in Antivo. When asked about these years, she changed the subject. Maybe hiding something. Meryl. The stories tell us that all Elvin once had the gift, but like so many things, it was lost. It's Keeper's job to remember to restore what we can. As each generation passes, magic becomes more rare amongst the Dalish. As the gift dies out, talented children are moved between clans so that the Keeper has a successor, and so no clan is in danger of being left without guidance. Mel was born to the Alarian clan who wandered the hills of Navarra. She was the third child of the clan with an ancient gift born to her. When the next Arvalan gathering of the clans occurred, she was given to the Sabra clan to be the first to the Keeper Merithari. Mel was just 4 years old. She spent most of her life in Ferelden and Kakari Wilds until her clan was driven north by the Blight. This is also the same clan, I believe, that the hero of Ferelden is from, if you choose to be Dalish. Albert Hawke. Son of Malcolm Hawke and Leandra Amel, Albert has lived in many places throughout Ferelden. His father was a mage whose gifts passed on to both Albert and Bethany, Malcolm's daughter. Malcolm refused to submit himself to Chantry's rules. He kept his abilities a secret and taught his children to do the same. Therefore, his family was constantly on the move to avoid Templar hunters. 10 years ago, the family settled in the village of Lothering, building a home on the outskirts, making a life where they wouldn't be forever on the run. Though Leandra worried constantly about the Templars would one day catch up with them, Malcolm's teachings were sufficient to keep them safe. He died 3 years ago, leaving Albert responsible for the welfare of his mother and younger siblings. When the Blight began, Carver enlisted in King Caelin's regiment, saying the hordes spilling from the Kakari Wilds meant their home would be quickly overrun by Darkspawn if they were not defeated immediately. Albert remained in Lothering to safeguard the family. Carver appeared to be on their doorstep about a month later, exhausted and injured. King Caelin had been betrayed and slain at Ostagar, and the horde was advancing on Lothering. Though Albert and the others were making plans to leave, they fled their home before they were fully prepared, and it may still have been too late. Now, he died 3 years ago from the start of the game, so he's probably been dead over 5 years at this point, maybe 5 or 6 years. Sebastian Vale. In the face of danger, sometimes the bravest thing to do is stand back and trust the Maker will see justice done. Sebastian Vale is the only surviving son of the ruling families of Starkhaven, which was murdered in a violent coup d'etat. Sebastian cannot forget the irony that he still lives only because his family was so ashamed of his drinking and womanizing that they committed him to the Kirkwall Chantry against his will. After initially rejecting a priest lifestyle, Sebastian was more surprised than anyone to realize that his show of faith had turned real. Since then, his belief in the Maker and his plan for Thedas had been unshakable. Embracing the new role, Sebastian took vows of poverty and chastity to become a sworn brother of the Chantry, until word of his family's death forced him to take up worldly concerns once again. Grand Cleric Athena, Sebastian's mentor and friend, hopes to convince him to walk away from the struggle for Starkhaven and return to the good works of the Chantry. Yes, he's the person we've been murdering people for. Varric Tethras. I know everyone in the city worth knowing. Varric was born 3 years after his father's exile from Orzammar into the world of Merchants Guild. The ancestors never spoke, and the Paragons were the heroes in tall tales. The number of dances a Kaline lady gives to a lowborn ascendant boy were more pivotal than the reigns of kings. While Bartrand ran the business and drove House Tethras ever higher up the social ladder, Varric looked after the family and their retainers. His mother, Lady Elsa, suffered terribly from the trauma of her disgrace and exile, finding solace in liquor and smoke. It fell to her younger son to try and curb the worst of the drunken rages, and to keep her from becoming a matter of public scandal, and to care for her when she fell ill from her excesses. Though he is famous throughout the Merchants Guild for his stories, Varric rarely speaks of himself or his family. Most of Kirkwall knows him. Everyone has bought him a drink or at least once, for the sake of his fictions rather than his family connections. Viscount Marlowe Dumar. What happened to Viscount Perrin Therenhold was a travesty. I served him in the keep and my blood boils when I hear people call him a tyrant. He was a good man who tried his best to free Kirkwall from the control of those who use power for their own purposes. It's always been that way here, hasn't it? Long ago it was the Imperium, now it was the Canari, then the Legions, and now the Templars. When have we ever ruled ourselves? He tried to kick those Templar bastards out and give us a real freedom. What did it get him? Now the Chantry has chosen Lord Marlowe Dumar as his replacement, and after weeks and weeks of arguing, after telling the nobility that they would be choosing their Viscount, after everyone saying it was time to use a new title, why not King? Why keep using the name imposed by their legions? After all that, the Chantry chose him. I suppose I can see why. Everyone thinks he has the spine of a jellyfish, and it does seem that way. Truly he has the Templars on one side, nobility on the other, and everyone expects him to solve all their problems. Yet he has no power to actually accomplish it. He keeps the peace as best he can. I think he does a good job, even if no one else does. And he loves that sad little boy. I see the way young Seamus looks at his father, and I feel for him. Locked up in the keep with no other children, watching his father be put down by every self-important windbag that walks into the Great Hall. It makes me miss the days of Perrin Therenhold, even though they were chaotic. We can only hope that one day Seamus gives the city the legacy it deserves. A letter from an unknown servant. Xenon the Antiquarian. You received the invitation, then you are fortunate indeed. Xenon is no ordinary man. You will discover for yourself when you enter the Black Imperium. The item you see resting in the chair is not one of the displays, rather, it is the proprietor. It may speak to you, that's Xenon using the mystical bauble that allowed him to communicate since he lost the power of speech. The story tells that Xenon was a Kirkwall nobleman in the Age of Steel, almost 300 years ago. Obsessed with the pursuit of eternal life, he made a deal with a powerful witch. Some say it was the Antivan Witch of the Wares, and his wish was granted. He obtained eternal life, but not eternal youth. His body became decrepit, and he used his vast wealth to seek out ways to preserve it. There were some magical, many were dangerous, and most of them were unsuccessful. What remains is an immobile mass of twisted flesh. I think Xenon's mind has slowly decayed along with his body. He hid away in Undercity and slowly amassed a collection that's sure to amaze. If he invited you, he thinks you have the coin he needs to further his search for a cure. Just don't think of selling anything, of stealing anything. The golem is not for show. Although you're free to look around the shop, I wouldn't suggest staying over long. You might be present for one of his baths. His servant gives him hourly to keep his flesh from becoming completely desiccated. Trust me, you don't want that. From a letter of an unknown origin. Okay, we just have letters and notes left. Captain Raynor's. I think we've actually read all of these. Yeah, we read all of these. These were all quests. And we're done. Art of War is it's just tutorials, and notes is just like a note what we've read already. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you hopefully at the start of Legacy, which is the first DLC. Thank you for watching.